Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through the sources, pull out the key insights, and basically help you get informed fast. Today, we're diving into, well, a story that's just gripped everyone and seems impossible to look away from, the Jeffrey Epstein narrative. Our goal here is to unpack why this whole thing, the facts, the conspiracies, why it taps into our anxieties about power, especially in the US today. We're basing a lot of this on a really interesting Politico opinion piece, The Epstein Conspiracy is the Horror Story of Our Age by Dan Brooks.
Yeah, you're right. It's become this immovable object in the public eye. We even saw it this past week, right? Attempts by Donald Trump, for instance, to shift focus. He was on Truth Social talking about changing team names back. Washington Redskins, Cleveland Indians. And the New York Times, among others, reported it as, well, a pretty obvious attempt to distract from the refusal to release files on the Epstein investigation.
And it just didn't seem to work, did it? I mean, reports that House Republican leaders even canceled votes, sent people home early, apparently to duck bipartisan pressure for those Epstein files. Kind of wild. Like, Epstein and death might be the one thing Trump can't overshadow.
It really does show how deeply this story connects, doesn't it? It taps into something fundamental about how people see power working, or maybe not working. It's quite something. Almost unprecedented, really.
Okay, so as we dig into why it resonates, we really need to separate things out. What do we actually know? What's the documented reality of Epstein's actions if we strip away all the, the noise and speculation?
Well, the documented reality is pretty lurid all by itself. It paints a very grim picture. Justice delayed, denied. Epstein was, rich, super connected, a villain who basically flouted law and decency for decades, and for the most part got away with it. He's accused of trafficking dozens of victims, many were teenagers, and these victims have come forward very bravely, claiming powerful people took part in their abuse. We know Trump's name appears in investigation files, that's according to the Wall Street Journal, though he denied writing some lewd birthday note that mentioned secrets. And it's really important to state this clearly, Trump hasn't been accused of any wrongdoing linked to Epstein himself. And then the final, definite fact. Epstein died in prison, waiting trial.
Yeah, just those documented facts are chilling enough. But what's really striking, and what the Politico piece gets into, is how that factual story often gets pushed aside, right? For a lot of people, there's this other narrative, the unproven one. What's the core of that more popular conspiracy theory?
All right, the conspiracy version takes things in a very different direction. It really changes the ending. Two key differences, basically. First, it says Epstein was murdered in prison. It wasn't suicide. And second, it claims he had this client list. Super wealthy, powerful people who he supplied with underage girls for sex. And he used this list for blackmail to control public figures. The speculation, the plausible but totally unsupported part, is that he flew people on his private jet, the Lolita Express, out to his island for these illegal sex acts. And that he and Ghislaine Maxwell, the source, calls her his Renfield, like Dracula's obsessed servant, which is quite a comparison, that they'd secretly videotaped everything as leverage.
Yeah.
And the theory's conclusion, these powerful clients had him killed, silenced before he could talk in trial.
So it's way more than just a crime story then. It's become symbolic. The Politico piece uses that Dracula comparison you mentioned. What's the insight there? Why does that analogy work so well for this story?
It's a great comparison, actually. It really gets to the heart of it. Bram Stoker's Dracula, back in 1897, it drew on these ancient vampire legends. Dracula, the aristocrat, drinking blood, preying on peasants, corrupting young women. It was all about medieval fears of the aristocracy. Their parasitism, being above the rules, challenging the church. And the Epstein story, both the factual one and the conspiracy theory, they tap into very similar anxieties we have now in the 21st century about our own ruling class. What's really fascinating, the article points out, is that the biggest power figure in this story isn't a king or a politician. It's a financial advisor.
Yeah.
His money, his connections. That's seen as the real power behind, the government and the legal system we're supposed to believe in.
Right.
And that detail about his company being based in the Virgin Islands for tax reasons.
Right.
It just reinforces that idea. He could avoid the obligations the rest of us have to our country, our communities. So Epstein becomes this symbol, this modern vampire almost, feeding on the system, outside the rules. It reflects these deep fears about where real power lies.
That idea of two Americas just jumps right out then. If people widely believe that there are these two separate realities, what does that do to trust? Trust in, anything, any institution. Doesn't it just corrode the whole idea of how society is supposed to work?
Exactly. That's precisely the picture the conspiracy theory paints. Two Americas, two sets of rules, two standards. There's the America most people live in, You work, you follow the rules, you wait on hold when you call your representative. And then there's this other America for the rich, where allegedly statutory rape is an open secret, presidential candidates forget their differences and party on sex islands.
Yeah.
The central idea is just money trumps everything: law, public opinion, even politics. So both stories, the real one and the conspiracy, they kind of end up painting the powerful as, well, vampires again. Parasites, exempt from the rules that shape everybody else's life.
That's a really bleak outlook. Just profound distrust. But the source also talks about what it calls the boring truth of Epstein. Does that version still hit hard, even without the cloak and dagger stuff? Or is it maybe even more disturbing in a way?
Oh, it definitely does. And for millions of people, it hits just as hard, maybe harder, because it feels so familiar. The boring version is about the epic institutional failure around his death. The jail itself, New York's Metropolitan Correctional Facility, which is completely dysfunctional. Leaking pipes, falling apart, cameras not working, guards overworked, understaffed, apparently browsing the internet instead of watching inmates.
Right, just basic incompetence.
Exactly. It's not some grand conspiracy. It's a story of systemic failure. It's a story anyone recognizes if they've seen a public service starved of funds, prioritizing low taxes or high profits over just doing its job. And if you zoom out, it connects to that bigger picture. Finance dominating the economy, money dominating politics. It suggests a system that just doesn't or can't restrain the power of the very few who live incredibly well without really contributing, while the majority is supposed to be in charge. So yeah, the conspiracy theory almost certainly gets the facts wrong about how he died. But the important parts, the anxieties about power, about who gets away with what, those parts still feel true to a lot of people based on how they see the system working or failing.
And it really seems like this whole story, whichever version you lean towards, is genuinely crossing party lines right now, doesn't it? That seems significant.
Absolutely significant. The Politico piece notes how unprecedented it feels to see Democrats actually joining up with these, quote, mutinous congressional Republicans. Joining them to publicly demand Trump release the Epstein investigation info. Now, Democrats have their reasons, politically of course, but Trump seemingly unable to control his own party on this issue. That's striking. The kind of money power Epstein symbolized, it clearly went beyond party lines. And the public's fascination with him, it seems to be doing the same. If Trump really can't shut down the public interest here, if he loses his grip on the party over this, well, the Epstein legend, as the article says, might just become the defining story of our time.
So as we wrap this up, maybe something for you listening to think about is, which version of this Epstein story really hits home for you? Is it the dramatic conspiracy, the shadowy figures pulling strings, or is it the more mundane but maybe equally horrifying story of just systems failing, institutional rot? Which one captures your own anxieties about power, about who's really in charge in America today? Because in the end, both stories seem to point to the same uncomfortable place, a system where the rules just don't seem to apply equally to everyone.